And we're live. So I'm here with Renee. She was a licensed foster parent and withdrew her involvement after she saw how the systems treated her sister, herself, and others. And we're here to get to the bottom of how she felt and what kind of things, maybe some advice that you can take away from today when you're dealing with child welfare or any types of CPS services and things like that. So Renee, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got involved with CPS and child welfare?
Okay. Thank you so much, Billy, first of all, for doing this and giving families and parents a voice. I think it's awesome to have a platform for people to be able to speak about this and hear what's really going on. So I appreciate that.
It's my
Um,
pleasure. Thank you for coming.
so, absolutely. So, um, like you said, I have 18 years of experience with being a foster parent. I had 4 children of my own and I adopted 5. Um, Now some kids have grown up and, moved out of the house. I'm down to 4 kids now. But my first experience was 18 years ago when my sister had started getting into meth, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And her son was removed. He was 10 months old. And I had CPS come into my home for the first time because I had custody of him, or physical custody of him.
I see.
And I needed resources, so I asked for help. And they came in, told me not to get licensed, to just keep doing the kinship care, which provided me $18 a month subsidy, which he was in diapers. And he really had a lot of issues, so I wasn't able to put him into regular daycare
Right.
at that time. I really didn't have much support or direction. I had no idea what to do and kind of just fumbled around through the system. Then my next encounter with CPS was another family member, my brother. And I'll get more into how the story unfolds later on down the road. But he had a child that had a near drowning in the bathtub,
Mm.
and his
Wow.
son was removed. Both boys were removed at that time and placed in my care. Um, and then that's when I looked into licensing and finally got licensed.
Mm.
So that was 2009. And that was a big fiasco as well because the baby was 7 months and the other one was 2 years old. And the baby had seizures for the first year. Um, and they were on DDD, which is
Mm-hmm.
for high needs or disabled children.
Okay.
Um, and so, again, I was misinformed by CPS on what, avenues I could take and what was available. Now to kind of flip over, and then later on down the road, I did have some more come through, but I'd like to kind of pause there
Sure.
and go from kind of flip back and forth from my perspective
Mm-hmm.
and the parents' perspective.
Okay.
Okay. So now, years later, looking back and seeing what happened, um, I'm more aware now of how CPS can tell the foster parents. And I think this is important for people that are going through a battle to get their children back. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times you feel like your foster parents are against you. And I think that's because of the limited information that we get from CPS or
Right.
DCFS or whatever it's called in your state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really, really encountered that with the 4th child that I took in.
Okay.
But even with this, like, I really didn't have communication at that time with my brother and his wife because they were very upset about the removal of their children. They had worked, I want to say, about a year and a half. They had worked really hard
Mm-hmm.
to get their kids back, and they had their kids back for about 3 months. And then CPS came and did a random check.
Oh God.
Um, and they decided they were going to remove the kids again. Here's my problem with that.
Yeah,
The
tell me.
support ends when the children are placed back with their parents. The support ends. And
Okay.
also, I think it's very biased, the amount of support that a foster parent can receive versus the support that a parent receives. You know,
Okay.
from training to resources to information. I feel like the parents are always treated like an enemy and not treated as an actual parent who brings value to this child and love and something that only a biological family can offer. Okay.
Right.
I saw that when the parents admitted that they were using, and the mom went into rehab that was able to take children in. However, CPS would not let her children go stay at the rehab with her
Okay.
and participate. And they were still young, so it's not like they would have interfered with the school schedule
Sure.
or anything like that. You know, they were still like 2 and 4 years old. And
Okay.
I didn't know at the time, I didn't know that until years later that they were denied placement of the children in that particular rehab. And the whole reason she picked that one was because she was told that, you know, if they found a place that the children could be in, that they would place the children back with her. And that never happened. She graduated from the program,
Hmm.
and still it was like, no matter what they did, it seemed like the reports didn't match
Right.
the accuracy of what they were completing. And I feel like from talking to several different parents, a lot of times it's just completely inaccurate reports. Um, it's very biased against the parents and feeling like the parents are not good enough
Hmm.
and putting them down for every little thing instead of giving them the support they need to be able to handle the long-term raising of their children. Maybe they're from a low-income family that didn't have resources and they're only repeating the pattern of what they know. And that's my problem, because if we don't break that pattern, then you have broken children being adopted by foster families. They don't know their biological family, so they're forever wounded, forever wanting to know.
Exactly.
And the hurt continues to the next generation. And that is this whole thing of removals, like some of the removals, I agree, definitely needed to happen at least short term
Yeah.
because there was a risk. But so many times it is for stuff that is not, maybe being poor or being disabled, or you know, something that isn't necessarily in their immediate control to change. You
Right.
know, it's not always they beat their child or they did this or they did that.
Right.
And that's really what made me start questioning things, is when all these other children came into my life and then I started hearing about their stories. And I, you know, obviously through the years I became more informed and
Hmm.
more aware, which I wish I would have known then what I know now. But
Yeah. It's hard though, being
so,
the only one.
right. So then let's take my next child that came into my care. He was 3 years old.
Hmm.
Um, I knew nothing about him when he came. They just told me that he had been with a foster family for 3 days, and the foster family decided they couldn't handle his behavior because he hit their only son
Sure.
over a toy. Okay.
Hmm.
So this little boy gets dropped off to my home July 5th, and he is like crying. He's all upset. He gets dropped off with one tub that has stuff in it that doesn't fit him, doesn't, you
Oh
know,
God.
nothing. There's no memory books like we're supposed to do as foster parents. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
And in it, I see a little toy guitar. And I was like, oh, what is this? You know, and he tells me, he's like, that's the guitar my mom gave me.
Mm.
And that was the toy that that little kid was trying to take away from him. And that's why he hit him.
Oh, so everything's just
Okay.
out of context.
Right. So in my opinion, the training that is offered foster families is not sufficient because there should never be a disruption for such a minor thing. And
Right.
if you're not willing to go through the storm with them, you shouldn't even take them in. You know what I'm saying?
So that's a bit of
Okay, so
advice right
then,
there, just for like oncoming
yeah,
foster people. What would you call that? Oncoming foster parents?
yeah. Like the training is absolutely ridiculous in
Mhm.
my opinion. I went through my 6 weeks of training and it did not prepare me for anything that I faced as a foster parent.
Wow.
Now, I found out he had a sibling, and
Hmm.
I was the one who had to reach out to CPS and pursue sibling visitation. Then, as soon as the foster family that had a sister adopted the sister, they cut off all contact. There were no more phone calls. We did not know how to get a hold of him in any way. There were no more sibling visits. So now not only has this child lost his parents, but
Hmm.
he's lost his siblings, right? And I come to find out I was his fifth placement. He's 3 years old. He had only been in the system a year and he had been moved
Yeah.
5 times.
Wow.
And
That's
I
not
found out
okay.
that yeah, he sexually acted out towards his sister.
Mm.
So tell me, a
Jeez.
3-year-old doesn't naturally do that, right?
Right. Right.
No, they don't. So why would a foster family just say, you know what, get rid of this kid? We don't want to deal with his problems, but we want to keep the little girl.
Mm.
That's another problem I have. You should not be able to pick and choose who you're going to keep and separate siblings and cause further disruption to the original child's life. That's
Right.
not fair. So that was my first sign that he had been sexually abused. Then he acted out towards some of my kids, and they were only
Sure.
4, so I had three boys that were 4 years old. And I just noted some odd behaviors. So I immediately got him involved in play therapy and we started working through it. And then his behavior subsided. We just had to teach like good touching and all that stuff. So that really bothered me knowing that, this system is not designed for what's best for the child. If you're
Agreed.
willing to separate siblings and take them away from their parents like that and just do whatever the foster parents want. And again, I'm coming from a foster parent background, but
Hmm.
I don't feel that I should have more rights than the biological parent. I
Absolutely.
shouldn't be treated with, oh, but I don't want the parents to have their children back because I've attached to them and I want them.
Hmm.
What? That's not what fostering is about.
Yeah.
Fostering is offering love, care, and the attention they need until the parents can reunite. That's what my intentions were, right?
Right.
All right, so then we're going to go forward a little bit more
Okay.
to my sister. Um, this is the one that will probably get me really emotional.
And like I said, you can always take a break anytime, and we can always go past it and come back anytime.
Yeah, there's
But
no going past it.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Um,
sharing it. Seriously.
yeah. So my sister is the one who originally had her child moved to me, and that's what got me into foster care.
Hmm.
Okay. She had cleaned up her life. She was doing great. She had been doing great for several years. Um, and she met a guy. Um, they she ended up getting pregnant, and so they decided to move to California.
Okay.
Okay. I live in Arizona. So about 10 months after her baby was born, in I want to say October of 2015, I believe,
Okay.
because it's been going on for a while now. Um, her boyfriend, the baby's dad, ended up having a domestic violence situation against her. They had gotten in an argument. She was trying to get in the car with the kids. Um, her oldest at that time, I believe, was 10. And he jumped out and he got in front of the guy and said, "No, leave my mom alone, leave my mom alone." and the guy pushed him. And that is what my sister called the police. She locked herself in the car with the kids, called the police, and that's what started her new CPS case, because she was a victim of domestic violence. Her 10-month-old was nursing, and they came and removed her 3 boys. Now, I think what happened personally is they went and saw, because in California, it's very expensive, right? She was disabled. She only got like 800 and something in disability, so she couldn't really afford like a regular apartment. So they rented a 1 or 2 bedroom motel suite kind of thing, and that's where they lived. It was not up to CPS's standard of living. Right? So they walk in, they know, hey, this woman's disabled. It's gonna be difficult for her to fight our system. She does, you know, she's not very educated. She's poor. She's not gonna be able to afford an attorney. And we can say whatever we want, right?
Yeah.
So they remove a nursing baby. They remove the other 2 kids who, you know, also were very, very close with their mom. Luckily, at that time, my dad was able to take them in. So he ended up taking the boys in. My sister moved in with a neighbor next door that was able to rent her a room. And she worked really hard for a year and a half to get her kids back. You know, she did everything, drug tested, did all the classes, everything she needed. So they give her the kids back. And this worker, I don't know if I could say her name, but I'm going to, because that woman has caused a lot of damage.
I don't know what the rules are, so.
I don't know, if you have to bleep it out, call her Wendy B for a bad word. But,
well, we don't know where she is, so.
So, yeah. And so she told my sister, because my sister said, you know, I've got my kids back now. And CPS, I guess, doesn't step away for like 6 months completely, right? Even after you're reunified with your children.
Is that right?
So she said, you can't leave. You can't leave to go back to Arizona for 6 months. You have to stay here. She's like, I could barely afford the, you know, the suite that she was staying at because she was no longer with the baby's dad. And so the woman absolutely, she told her that if she leaves the state, that she would report that she had kidnapped her children.
Wow.
Okay? That's what she was told. So she, yeah. So she wasn't able to come live with me where she would have been safe. Right. And she would have been able to transition back into her own place because she could afford rent here. And I don't understand that, because CPS is here, CPS is there. Why can't it just get transferred? Now, the purpose got revealed to me later as I learned more. So not even 2 months later, this woman comes back in, says that she got an anonymous call and she's removing the boys.
Wow.
Okay. So she takes the boys again. Yeah. And this time my dad, one of my other sisters, stepsister, had started having seizures and had to move into my dad's with her kids. So they weren't able to take the children in at that time. I wanted them, but they said, oh, well, we need to keep the kids here in the state that the mom's in. And I asked about transferring, and she said, no, she can't transfer. If she transfers, none of her services will be paid for. That's what she told me. But she told my sister that it absolutely could not happen, that her case was here, she had to stay here. Okay? So then, because again, my sister's on disability and on public assistance, right? So when the boys get removed, she has no food stamps, she has no extra cash assistance. She can no longer even afford the motel she was at. Not even one that's not even a 1-bedroom. She couldn't afford any of them. It was very expensive, right? So my sister ended up on the streets, homeless. Now, they wouldn't give her bus passes. They told her that she could only have calls if they were supervised.
Right.
And they had to be supervised by CPS. So how do you make a phone call to a foster family's home and have a supervised call? They never offered how that could be done. Okay. So for 8 months, she never even got to talk to her children. This whole time, since the first case opened in 2015, I immediately drove down there and I met with her social worker
Mm-hmm.
and said, I have the older brother. If anything ever happens and she doesn't get her kids back, I want these boys. I want it to be known. I want these boys to be together. Okay. Then they placed her kids with someone else, and then said that, I think it was the godmother, and my sister was so upset, of course, because she, first of all, wasn't doing anything wrong. The anonymous call was never investigated. They just came and yanked the kids away again. Okay.
Right.
Then, so she made a bad decision and tried to go over there and take the kids back from the godmother's house. And that ended up backfiring big time. There was a family, this is where it gets real ugly, at my dad's church. My dad's a pastor in California. And one of the youth pastors said, we'll take the children. They had, I guess, done like an overnight with them when my dad needed to go somewhere. So they had met them at the church, had a small knowing of who they were, if that makes sense. So they considered them kinship now. That's what CPS placed them under, was kinship. So they did not have to go through the regular licensing, okay, which is a big deal. And I'll tell you why here in a few minutes. But I drove down there, I met the foster family, and I said, look, I've already been involved with CPS for a long time, telling them I want to get these boys to Arizona with their brother. They said, oh, well, God told us we were supposed to adopt them, blah, blah, blah. He kept me up till 1 o'clock in the morning trying to get me to change my mind. And after that, because I would not say yes, okay, I'm fine with you guys adopting my sister's children. I mean, they hadn't even been there a month, and he's talking about adoption. Not even a month. There was no severance hearing. There was nothing to even make him think that they would be adoptable. But this family really manipulated the system. So I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of writing on my, trying to remember how this all went through, in the timeline.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about that.
So I did not get a good feeling from the first time I met them. Their house was filthy. They had animals everywhere, which my nephews had severe asthmatic, allergies, eczema. The last thing they need is to be around animals. Okay.
Right.
And
right.
I know this because my sister had the same problem. She was severe asthmatic, had food allergies, eczema, all that stuff. So, and I've cared for her pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
Then my sister went into a rehab. She's like, what do you want me to do? She kept asking the lady, like, what do you want me to do? So she's like, I want you to go into a rehab. So she went into a rehab, and the caseworker supposedly only had Mondays off, which is the only day that she was allowed to make calls from the rehab. Okay. Nobody else would call.
Could that even be possible? Like how could that even, you know what I mean? Like,
right? Yeah. And on several occasions, my sister slept outside of, not rehabs, but homeless shelters.
Yeah. Okay.
In California, waiting for beds to open. There were no beds.
Right.
She was terrified of leaving the state. I said, Jessica, please don't stay on the streets. Like, just come here so I can help you. She said, no. Wendy already told me if I leave, she's going to immediately sever my rights and say I abandoned my children and they're going to be adopted by this foster family. Yeah, so she kept trying to, find a way to beat the system. In the meantime, she's being raped. She's being beat up on the streets. Her money every month is being stolen. Phones being stolen, IDs, everything. She had no way to even have a fighting chance to show up to things, much less get mail to be notified of when court hearings or anything were. And the lady wasn't telling her anything because supposedly she only had that one day, right?
Yeah.
And I went, after my sister's death, I actually went to the hospitals and got all of the reports of how many times she was in suicidal because she was on the street, she was being hurt. There's so many accounts of it, you know?
But CPS is what you're saying is put her there, like in
Right,
that
right.
mental
Because
state.
they could have offered her help to get into a domestic violence center
Yep.
and never removed the children
Yeah.
from the get-go, you know? And the man wasn't there anymore. So why was it even a risk high enough that she needed removal? She wasn't doing drugs, you know? And the only reason she went into the rehabs is because that's what they were telling her she had to do.
Yeah.
And then April 1st, I was of 2017. I was driving down for a visit because this whole time I was trying to go down and see the boys constantly to have, you know, keep that connection with them, make
Right.
sure they're okay. I would go to every court hearing. So every 6 weeks I was driving from Arizona to California to go to every hearing. Her dad, all the aunts, uncles, grandparents, everybody was showing up to every court hearing. We were 15 to 20 strong in every court hearing.
Right.
And
Jeez.
still, they wouldn't order my ICPC to have out of state placement because I was a single mom. I even had my foster care worker that had been with me. I had been with that agency for 10 years, contacting the social workers. They wouldn't return a call. They wouldn't return an email, nothing.
Yeah. That's
to
their
talk to them to
specialty.
say, no, she's solid, you know?
Yeah.
So finally, after a lot of research and wasted time, because of course they never tell you anything you need to know until it's too late to file whatever you needed to file that you didn't know about, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it's like, oh,
God.
well, you could have done this, but now it's too late. Okay, so now you're willing to give me the information.
Yeah.
So
That's how it works.
April 1st, I was driving down for a visit. And I'd like to go back even further. Okay.
Okay.
Before that even happened, my first scheduled court approved visit, which I had to go through all this rigmarole to get even a visit for a week with them at Christmas time and take them out of state to bring them to my home, right? So I had to have my foster licensing agency do an inspection, send it to them, blah, blah, blah. I had to go to court, request it in writing, get everybody on board with it. Then I go to pick up the boys, and the foster parents only bring one child.
That doesn't
And
make
they
sense.
say,
What?
oh, the other one didn't want to come. I'm like, what? I just talked to him on the phone yesterday. He was so excited. And I said, can I call him? Can I please have the number to call him so I could talk to him? Or can you just bring him back over here so I could talk to him and see what's really going on? You know, that's not like when they lived here in Arizona, I picked them up. They were at my house every weekend. I took them camping everywhere. Like, we were always together because my sister never lived more than 5 miles away from me. So he refused. The worker refused to make them let me talk to him. Later on, I find out it's because they bought him an iPad and he didn't want to put down the iPad.
Had nothing
So
to
that's
do.
why I missed a visit that I drove 600 miles round trip for. Which he still says that he regrets to this day. Okay. So I had several visits over the course of time, and I was usually able to take the 3 kids all together. Then my sister ended up being murdered because she was homeless, and the homeless people will sometimes pool their money together, and each of them will pitch in like $20 for that they got from panhandling or whatever, and then they share a room. So I talked to her the morning before she was killed, and she was in good spirits. She knew I was coming down, you know, and I was like, please think about coming home with me. And she's like, you know, let me just go to this next court hearing, and then I'll go from there. Maybe the judge will let me leave. So as I'm about an hour away from pickup, I get a call that my sister's been taken to the hospital and that they're sending the police to go get my parents to take them to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in to find out that they found her in a bathtub of ice in the motel room, and they had to resuscitate her 4 times on the way there. And that they put her in a medical coma to try and see if they could save her. And I kept telling the hospital, like, every day that she's in there, she's getting purple around her neck. And then it ended up, if we found out that she had spinal fluid that had leaked into her brain from being strangled. And so she was raped by like 3 different guys and then strangled and thrown in the bath of ice. I don't know if they were going to try and harvest her organs or set it up to make it look like an overdose or what.
Right.
But because it was at a place where she used to live, another woman had been concerned because she saw people coming out of the room and she knew Jessica was in there. And she went and the door was locked. She got maintenance to open it. So I didn't say anything to the foster parents. I just told my dad, I said, the boys are getting dropped off at your house for our visit. Please have one of our stepsisters stay with them while I'm at the hospital. And then CPS ended up calling me because the foster parents saw a post that I said, pray for my sister, she's in the hospital. And so CPS calls me and asks me what's going on, and I fill her in. She's like, oh, the boys need to go back to the foster family then so that the foster family can comfort them. What? They're with their biological family, their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, their brothers.
Their
you know
logic
what I mean?
is so weird. It's the most backward logic I've ever heard of.
It absolutely is. I'm like, what do you mean? So these people that they barely know, they hadn't even been there less than 6 months. They had been there. I've known them since they were born. I was at the hospital when they were born. The middle child, I was a wet nurse for because he had really bad allergies. And when my sister would get hospitalized for her asthma because of the medicine, I had a baby the same age, so I would nurse him and my son. So, I mean, the dynamics of like attachment, we had an attachment that nobody could replace. No foster family for 6 months, I don't care how much you love on them, is going to have that same kind of attachment. So I fought with them and I got the oldest one on the phone, and he talked to the worker and said, I don't want to go back. I want to stay with my auntie. I want to be with my auntie right now. So when I took them down to the hospital to see her, that was the first time they had seen their mom in over 8 months. And she was in a coma. It ended up finding out she was brain dead. And so we had her organs donated. She was in the hospital for about a week. And luckily I was able to keep the boys for the whole time that I was scheduled for spring break.
Right.
But then I returned them, which broke my heart because the boys were crying and saying, we want to go with our auntie. We want to go with our auntie.
Right.
And I came home and I was like, all right, I felt like I thought I knew what I needed to do. So I got 40 character reference letters from all the different companies I've worked with, from foster agency. I printed out all my classes and training, everything that I had, and got letters from even like the principals at my kids' schools, everything, saying that I was solid, that I was able to care for these kids, and from all the aunts, uncles, everything. So I called the supervisor, the main supervisor. So I went up the ladder. That's what I've always heard. Oh, you don't get answers where you're at, you go up the ladder. I went all the way up the freaking ladder to the very top. I had called a meeting, and my dad, myself, my stepsister, we went into this meeting feeling like this is it. When they see all of this, they're going to give us the boys,
Right.
Now their mom's dead. Their dad's somewhere in jail in Oregon or something. I don't know. He had fled the state.
Okay.
And the main supervisor literally stuck her hand in my face and said, I don't want to see all that. I've already read all of your emails and we're keeping them where they're at.
Well, how could
Can
she
you believe
respond
that?
like that?
Her and the other supervisor sitting there. I mean, I sent thousands of emails, thousands,
Mm-hmm.
just to, like, I call this bag my bag of pain, but this is what I had given one attorney, and that's just my emails that incriminate them. I'll get into the
Right.
attorney part.
Right. I
That's
love it.
not even
That's
all of
so
it.
awesome.
I mean, yeah, we're literally just lost my sister, not even 2 weeks before that. And she's sitting in front of the dad of this woman and the family and saying, nah, we see that you have all this stuff, but we're not even going to order your back, your ICPC to have them moved so that they could reunite with a sibling or be raised by family. So then it started another 6 months. And what I see now is she was just buying time. They were hoping that
Time
I
for
wouldn't
what?
know. Yeah. They told the parents, this is another thing. The social worker gave me wrong dates for court.
Yeah, I got that
Constantly.
too.
Yeah. And granted, I'm driving 600 miles to go
Right.
to the wrong court date. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
It's not just a minor inconvenience.
Right. This is all on
She
purpose.
was messing with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because I never did anything until I
It's
found
because
out
of
about
that.
the Safe Child Act, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's a incentive to adopt outside of family. And they're potentially looking at losing, what, 8,000 because the kids were special needs, so $24,000.
Oh, I think
Right?
it's like I
Pretty
think
big
it's
incentive.
25 grand.
The
Yeah, I
only
think it's
thing,
25 grand normally. And then it's on top of that the
oh
8
my
grand.
gosh,
So
that's even
over
worse
30 grand. Yeah.
per child. So times that by 3. And
Yeah.
none of the family could figure out why are they not like this. I literally should be like a wet dream for them. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's a family member
You
who
were.
wants them. She's been in contact since the beginning. She has a sibling. She's licensed. She's trained. Instead, it was adversity, adversity, adversity. So
Yeah.
I
You weren't
finally
treated the
talked
way you
to
should have been.
right. And I didn't know that the only thing that had to be done for an ICPC to be ordered was one paper filled out and submitted to court. She kept telling me, well, we can't file to order that until the next court hearing. So another 3 months, right? Dragging it out.
Right.
So I got finally, I'll just kind of cut out some of the details, but to kind of keep it in a good timeline, because I could probably spend about 3 days explaining this story. So I
We can always
finally
do
get
more
my
videos,
approval.
so
Definitely. So I finally get my approval, and I'm like, this is it. I just had summer vacation with the boys. I had all 3 boys for 2 weeks. And I'm like, all right, they came, they saw their rooms were all set up, everything was ready to go for them. And granted, mind you, I got approved in 24 days. 24 days. So had they done it on the initial removal, I would have had them months before even meeting the foster family that has them now. So still, that wasn't enough. I have my approval. I amended my state license to be able to have enough, for them to cover all the children. And still the lady told me, we're not going to send them to you because you have too many kids and you're a single mom. Where they're at, there's a mom and a dad. Come to find out, there wasn't just a mom and a dad, but there's 2 grandparents, adult children, there's 10 people living in this place. So you're telling me that I have too many people in my home, but it's okay for a family to have 10 people in their home and keep them,
That
but
doesn't make
not
any
okay for
sense.
them to be with us and to be with the biological family. And before my sister had died, she had sent an email to them. This is a God thing right here, but 3 days before she was killed, she had sent an email that said to all the workers, if for some reason I do not get my children back, I want them to be with their brother and my sister.
Right. Okay.
When we printed that out and took it to them, they said, it doesn't matter, we're the guardians, she's dead.
Really?
Yeah.
That's just how it works?
Yep. I even found the biological dads and had them submit letters into court. So they're all documented. Like this right here, this JV 296. I have so many different, I filed every goddamn thing I could find at the courthouse. I would
Yeah.
sit around after court and just talk to everybody and see what forms I hadn't filled out yet.
Right.
I had, they denied my dad and I de facto parental status as well, which was, I believe, illegal because my dad had already cared for them for the previous year and a half.
So
right?
they knew he existed.
So whoever was caring for them should have been able to get de facto parent status because the parent was deceased. At that court hearing, she said, I'm tired of you filing all these forms. I'm giving the foster parents de facto status. So that meant they blocked me from getting any court documents because that's the only way that I could get copies of anything from the court. If I didn't have de facto status, I cannot get any copies. Even their sibling was denied copies, and he's 18, almost 19 now. He was denied access to any of the records. They said it's a closed case, like confidential. So you can't have any of that information. So we didn't even ever see what the removal was based on. They won't give us any of that. So we get to court. My nephews had just left my house. They were super excited about coming. We get to court.
Of course.
The boys go in to talk to the attorney for like 2 seconds. They come out. The attorney calls me in and he's like, Renee, he's like, you're not going to like this. And I'm like, what? He said, the boys changed their mind. They want to stay where they're at. I'm like, why? He said, they didn't really say. They just said that they want to stay. So as their attorney, he didn't feel any need to push the envelope a little bit further when the boys have been asking for months and months and months to come to us to see what changed their mind. I had already had a court-ordered visit for after court. So I took them to my dad's house where it was a previous placement, right? And we're sitting there and I'm like, buddy, what happened? You know, what made you guys change your mind?
Easy stop.
And they said, well, the foster parents sat us down and they said that if we chose them, that we would get a new big house and that we could have a big trampoline like you have at your house, and they would get a quad and dirt bikes. And I'm like, what? And then
that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And they had already been, everybody, but it only pertains to me, right? It's only enforced with me, I should say. But everybody was told to not talk to the children about court. Okay?
Who was told? The foster parents or your family?
Both.
Right. Okay.
The judge said, neither one of you guys talk to them about anything so that there's no pressure. Yet the night before court, they did that. And
but
then
that can't be legal. That can't be legal at all.
It's not. Then I find out that they sat down because I called the attorney right away. I had everybody that was there because it was like some of my stepsisters, my dad, you know, everybody. And I typed up a letter and had everybody sign it saying that this is how the conversation went, you know, and this is what the boys said. The attorney says, All right, well, I'll send someone out for an investigation, Renee, but I really don't think that that's what happened. Why would an 8-year-old say that? Like, I don't even think I asked him. No, I didn't even ask him. We were just sitting around talking, and he's like, guess what? They're going to buy me a new house for my birthday. We're going to get a trampoline and quads and everything, because that's all the stuff they enjoyed doing at my house when
Yeah.
they were here.
Yeah. How many
And then
people
I was
heard?
like, what? Huh?
How many people were there to hear that?
At least 10.
Wow, at
We and
least 10
I
people.
we wrote the letters, copied them, submitted them by forms to the courthouse, to the attorneys, everybody, because you have to make copies and submit it to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's even worse than that. When I got the full story from the boys about what happened, because I was like, trying to ask them, but not just kind of let them talk themselves.
Yeah.
And this is what they said. They said, well, they sat us down and told us that no matter what we decide, that they'll support our decision. Okay. And then we told them that we wanted to live with you. And then they all started crying and said that they were really upset because if we go with you, they'll never see us again. But that we'll always be able to see you because you're family.
Yeah, so they're just
So
manipulating
they
the hell out of these
emotionally
kids.
manipulated them,
Yeah.
bribed them. And one of them was only, I think at that time he was only 3. The other one was
Jeez.
8, and the other one was 10 or 11.
Could the
So
3-year-old
easily
talk?
bought out, easily bribed. You know what I mean? Yeah, he did. He
Okay.
talked a lot. And that was the other thing. He would call me mama, and the foster mom put a screeching halt to that and told him that she's his mom and that I'm auntie.
Which is illegal, again, because I'm pretty sure that's completely against the fostering parent
Right. But
handbook
why
rule.
even necessary?
Yeah. Well, it's an
Right.
ego.
Why
It's an
even
ego thing.
necessary?
It's got to be an ego thing, like a power trip. Like they have power over you.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's crazy.
And the now 15-year-old, when he was supposed to be able to at 12 make calls to me on his own if he wanted to, because the foster parents stand right next to them as they're on the phone. And you could tell because I asked them like, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you guys do? And they look up and they're like, oh, nothing. And they sit behind the back of the couch.
Yeah.
So they make them sit on the floor behind the couch. Anyway.
Have code words, everyone.
And I feel like, yeah. Oh, and they taught them sign language. And they brought their kids to one of the hearing, and the girl was signing to the boys. It's incredible. Like the amount of stuff that they've done to manipulate, to keep that monthly money, and to have the oldest also had a pending lawsuit, which after getting the attorney and paying over $30,000 total, I think one court hearing cost me over $7,000.
Wow.
And this is all the stuff that I had mailed him. He did not submit one single page.
Yeah, because they're paid for and bought.
Page.
Yeah, that's crazy. That makes me sick to my stomach to hear that.
It's disgusting. And I think for another hearing, it was $5,000 for him to tell the court that he needed documents so that he could review because he had just come on. So then it was another 3 or 4 months before they could give us another hearing.
Oh,
and
that's
then
what
they
did.
denied him any documents because it was closed case. That's what he told me, at least. Who knows who's lying where?
It's
there's
a
so many
game to
freaking
them.
people that have monetary gain that are willing to do things that to me are unspeakable.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. So then later on, after I got the attorney, the oldest had a suicide attempt, and the foster parents, didn't tell us what was going on. And then said, because I was supposed to have a call with him, and said that we were texting back and forth. And at 3:00 in the morning, he sends a message, LOL. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Later to come find out that my nephew was in the hospital for a suicide attempt, and he thinks that's funny. Like, I don't know what. Anyway.
That's
My anger will get
interesting.
me off track sometimes with the things that they've been allowed to do. They also, CPS also allowed the foster parents on court ordered visits with me to show up to the parking lot and change visitation. He didn't bring any of the children. He made me sign a letter stating that I would not keep the youngest overnight, that I would return him and only keep him from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m., even though I was supposed to have 3 overnights with him. They stopped allowing him, the foster parents stopped allowing him to come with the other boys on their 2-week summer visits and their week at Christmas, right after the mom died. And supposedly it was because of this. The little boy came home after his mom died and said, because we took him to the funeral, that we had, and he said,
Right.
I want to die so I could be with my mommy.
Jeez.
So because of that, the foster parents said that I was not keeping his mental health safe or something like that, that it wasn't good for him to talk about his mom
Yeah.
because
Okay.
he would
That's
have
weird.
suicidal thoughts. No, that's how a 3-year-old freaking explains
Right.
that his mom's dead and he misses his mommy, right? Then all this stuff goes on and on and on. We have the court hearing, and the big brother testifies that he wants to live with his brothers. The grandparents testify, everybody. But the attorney had convinced me at that court hearing, which I had believed the whole time that the 3 kids' testimony would be the defining moment, that it would help bring some of that out. The GAL and my attorney convinced me on the spot to not put the boys on the stand because it would hurt my case, that it would make me look like a monster that's emotionally battering these children by making them testify.
What?
And that right there kills my case, I believe, because now there's no record anywhere of the boys saying that they wanted to live with us. And they said,
That's a
we're
game.
going to let the boys stay there
Wow.
because now they're attached to the new family. Yeah. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And talk about they went from, I had 2 calls a week with the boys. Now I just had a call with them this afternoon, but I haven't talked to them in a month and a half. They're
Right.
supposed to have free will to call me whenever they want. Whenever the oldest one has tried to do so, they hang up the phone on him and say, this conversation's over.
So are you doing
After my sister
classes too?
passed, yeah.
Wow. They're really putting
He's
you through
15
it.
now. He's 15. He's not even allowed to have a social media account of any form to be able to contact us or see any pictures or anything.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to expose what they're doing is what it is.
And then there was, absolutely. And I was also told by the judge that I cannot post anything on my social media about CPS.
Right. Well, because you have an open case, so that's going to make posting this a little difficult.
It's not even my open case, though.
Oh, so if it's not your
even my
case, then
case.
then that doesn't. Well, maybe it's because it's because it's a open case, if that makes sense.
No, it was because the foster parents complained that I was talking bad about them on Facebook. And it wasn't even about them, actually.
Right.
It was a
It's just
very
about the
vague,
situation.
I hate the system kind of message, you
Yeah.
know? I
No
didn't say
different than
anybody's
this.
names.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, it's just continued. I get so much anxiety when it comes time to even be able to have a call because I know, oh, here's the other thing. So when they were given permission to adopt, they made us, they gave us a, oh, what is it called? But it's like a third party that's supposed to work out like a post-adoption agreement for visitation. Because I used to get about 8 weeks a year. Now I've seen the boys literally 3 days this whole year.
But how is that possible? Like when it's your obligation to have physical contact and visits
because they seem to be able to do whatever they want, and CPS has no accountability.
I mean, I can
None.
teach you. I
They
can
were,
teach you some
when I
things.
found,
Oh,
well,
sorry.
hopefully I can, the adoption hasn't actually happened yet because of COVID, but I
Yeah.
appealed the whole thing. It took over, I want to say almost 2 years to even get an appeal hearing for me because I wasn't a parent. I was a non-parent. So parents are supposed to
What
have
should it
their
make any
appeal heard in
difference?
30 days.
Sure. Okay,
Right.
that makes sense.
And I
Yeah.
wasn't
Okay. But
allowed to see
still.
any of the documents. Check this out. And I wasn't allowed to see any of the documents because I was given an appellant attorney. I wasn't allowed to see any documents that CPS provided them or
Wow.
anything regarding the case. So how do I know
It's a
what they put
con.
in there and didn't
Yeah.
put in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all just a freaking game. It is a game.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, you just need to file this. Oh, you just need to do this. And I would do it, and then they would still reject it.
Right.
So, I mean, I even went and contacted the ombudsman, all my family members. I think we sent 20 reports to the ombudsman to do an investigation. Do you think they ever called me? No.
No, absolutely not.
But all of a sudden, the foster parents moved because they didn't have proper housing for the boys.
How is that possible?
Right? Because your
They're getting
social worker is
paid.
going and visiting you every 30 days, and they're saying, I have too many kids that it would be disruptive, but yet they have people sleeping on the couch because they didn't have a big enough house for the 10 people that were there. I mean, and then when someone did look into it, check this out. This is even more concerning. So the ombudsman is supposed to be a non-paid, non-biased party, right?
Right.
Is that what your understanding of an ombudsman is?
Yeah, I thought it was like a person of a position where they could come in and then they investigate your case.
Right. Without bias, right?
Oh,
You know
sure,
that
sure. Thank you.
they're housed in the same office at the same address as the CPS corporate office.
But they act like there's nobody in existence for me to talk to. Like when I asked for to
Right.
speak to HR, or they were like,
Right.
they all laughed.
And the ombudsman is not supposed to be biased. How can you be residing with all these people, working with all these people, and not be biased?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Eat
then it
lunch
gets
with
even
them.
more interesting because they don't call me to do an investigation, which is the main character, so to speak, in this whole thing, right? They call
Yeah.
another auntie that, and everybody put my name on there. Like, you need to talk to Renee. She knows all the details. Renee's logged all this. Renee, talk to Renee, talk to Renee.
Right.
So but I had talked to her, and her and I are pretty close. So she knew a lot of the details, but she didn't have like the dates or all that stuff. So the ombudsman calls her to do the interview, to do the investigation. As she starts talking to her and explaining all this of what she knows, all of a sudden she starts talking about the supervisor that I told you put her hand in my face.
Right.
And then that woman was on the line. She spoke up and said, oh, that's not how it happened. That woman was on the line on a three-way call, which was not told from the get-go. And how can you properly be doing an investigation about CPS when you have the supervisor for CPS on the phone?
Jesus. It's just a big circle. They're just making you chase your own tail.
Right. So that means there's absolutely no entity that oversees CPS.
Right. But we can change that.
Right?
Like, yeah, we can definitely change that.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the long and short of it.
Yeah.
And just to kind of give you, I'm going to let you take a peek into what I call my bag of pain. I don't know if you can see all that.
Jeez.
This bag weighs, I don't know how much. And these are all my files from, I literally copied everything. I copied every court document that I had helped any family member file that would file. I mean, when they
Jeez.
said that they were going to let the foster family adopt these boys, we had 20 plus people crying out in the waiting room outside of the court.
They don't care.
It just doesn't make sense. You see that there's a big support system, there's a big loving family, and you're going to give them to these strangers that are bribing them.
They're Nazis. I hate to say
I
it like
just,
that, but they
yeah,
really this is the number one response. We're just doing our job.
yeah, right. And you know what's even crazier? I mean, that's why I say I could probably make a movie off this stuff.
We should.
But because
No,
I'm in
yeah, we
Arizona,
should.
right. Well, California, you're not allowed to record phone calls without permission, right?
Sure.
In Arizona, that's not the law. You can
Right.
record without permission or consent. I have every single conversation almost after the first, I would say 6 months. When I started figuring out that something was wrong, I started recording everything, every phone call. I have the
Yeah.
attorney saying, don't worry about it. The GAL is my buddy. I'll just call him and talk to
Biggest
him.
liars.
I have
Yep.
the GAL referred me to this attorney, which is basically illegal.
Yeah.
I have them telling me so many things, and I have emails, thousands of emails where they've incriminated themselves and lied. And I mean, every single parent, grandparent, everybody has. I said, like, we don't understand what's going on, you
Right.
know. So that has been my experience in a
Yeah.
short, condensed version of why I do not believe the system is any longer structured to support children that are being hurt.
Right.
It's not about that. There is an agenda. The agenda is to make money, make kids disappear. I have another kid that was in my care for a long time, got adopted out, and he has disappeared from his family. I
Jeez.
know the foster mom knows, the adoptive mom knows where he is, but she won't tell anybody, and she's blocked everybody. And there was sexual abuse happening at that home. So he was temporarily removed and put back in my care, and then CPS took him back.
Yeah.
And she was trying to get me to take him under guardianship, which I asked about because I was totally willing to do it because I love this little boy.
Right.
But she's in, she works for Comtrans, which is like a transporting children to medical appointments. And she would have
Oh,
lost her
okay.
fingerprint clearance card if she had surrendered her child to me. So
Wow.
instead, I think they shipped him off somewhere, either to another relative or something. I have no idea what happened to this little boy.
Yeah. And then
I
they
don't
get
even know how to
paid.
go
They get
ask for an
paid every month.
investigation to find out where he is. And again, I'm a non-parent in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. They act like they're helping you, and then they drop the ball, and then it's never their fault. It's never their
Right,
fault that like the kids in their system are getting raped, like going missing,
right.
like getting beaten,
Oh
and
yeah.
maybe worse. Like who knows? I think I read something on the FBI saying that 60% of the kids that came from child sex slavery that they rescued started at CPS.
Yes. My brother actually works in a center, and he works on the Hope Wing, which is for sex trafficked teenagers. And I mean, it's incredible. Most of
Yeah.
them were in foster care. And I believe there's some people that will just, here, you know, take this kid, give me $5,000. You know, it's not even
Yeah.
like big money. Like
No.
your tax return is going to give you more than that, you know? Like,
My
why do
kid
you have
almost went
to
missing.
put a life of a child at risk? You
Yeah.
know, so I'm ready to, whatever I can do to help the cause of exposing the truth about this stuff, you can count me in because my family has been absolutely devastated. The big brother
Right.
went through hell for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
He was just torn because he was 16 when his mom got murdered, you know, so he
Right.
was old enough to understand. And he felt betrayed because he didn't understand why his brothers would prefer to have Xbox One over him, you know?
Yeah, no, this whole entire experience has been just one bad experience after the other, you know. It's like it's hard to find a good one. And
Right.
honestly, you know, before we even wrap this up, what kind of advice would you say that you have if and like if you could just learn something from this and tell yourself if you were restarting this, like what like other than don't talk to them, like what would you
Don't
do
talk
if
to them. Um, document if you're already in it. Document, document, document. Nothing should be said over the phone if you're in a state where you can record. Everything should be correspondence in writing so that you have proof of what was said and what was required of you. Um, file every damn thing you can. But first and foremost, if you haven't been involved, do not let them in. And if you let them in, you better damn well record that whole conversation and have witnesses.
yeah,
Just to kind of tell you one other quick little story
please.
about a recent event that happened to myself. So again, 18 years foster care experience, blah blah blah. The and also to let you know, as soon as this whole time with all the parents, I've always kept open communication with their children.
Right.
Pictures, memory books, with my siblings, because I knew who the parents were. I was able to have visitation. I would do it in my home so that I knew that, you know, everything was going good. Like my sister, she was always welcome to come spend the night at my house, you know, do whatever. Um, and now I actually, strangely, with crazy, strange events, but now uh, the biological mom to two of my adoptive children actually live with me. She has stage 4 breast cancer, and
Wow.
so she was going to go into hospice. And with COVID, the boys wouldn't have been able to see her. My brother wouldn't have been able to see her, so I ended up taking her in,
Mm.
and she's gone through now about 7 treatments of cancer, and she's getting better. And I believe it's because she's next to her babies,
Yeah,
she's next to her kids,
the environment.
she's getting to love on them and have that relationship, you know. And
Yeah,
so in my mind, even though there was severance, it doesn't take that parent away. It takes the responsible party away, but it doesn't take that parent away. You know
right.
what I mean? And so that's what really disturbs me, is that for these parents that maybe they were addicts or maybe something happened where they made a
Sure.
bad choice, but they got better, you know?
Yeah,
Even when, and I guess this would be up for debate depending on people, but even when they were, you know, maybe not on the right track, but they were doing pretty good, I always wanted them to see their kids. I always wanted to have, you know, every birthday party, they were invited. I would set everything up and just basically walk away like, hey, this is your
right.
moment with them. Do it, you know?
Yeah,
And I think that there needs to be a gap, some kind of program that can
yeah,
allow foster parents. First, foster parents need to be educated on how important their role is and
yeah,
what their role is so they can stay in their lane. But also, they need to know that really they can make or break the difference for this child's permanent life, you
yeah,
know, by supporting that parent that is being extradited, you know, making them feel included, giving them hope. I mean, I know so many people that had their children removed and weren't even into drugs, but they became so devastated and heartbroken and lost because of the removal that they turned to drugs. So
yeah.
it's like,
Everything they're
you
saying that they
know,
help with, they
what are we
cause.
really doing here to our society?
Yeah,
Yes, yes. And you have these parents that are just crying and suicidal and have no hope. And as a foster parent, they could be that hope, you know, just sending a text message with a picture of their kid that day, or a little message, you know, a voice message saying, hey, mommy, love you, keep doing the good work, you know, something encouraging.
right.
Instead of like, oh, they're bad and they don't love you. And, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
this is your new home, blah,
One
blah,
light note.
blah, all that stuff.
Like I had a really good foster. family for my kid, for my daughter, and my person who said that facilitates the meeting said that this was the only foster parents. This is sad, by the way. These are the only foster parents that would jump on the Zooms during COVID-19 and not withhold them from their kids and everything like that, and make up as many excuses as other parents could, being like, we can't do it. There's no way we can do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah, these ones I
Yeah.
lucked out, but not everybody gets this.
Yeah. See, right. And that probably made the biggest difference in the world, is having a
Yes.
foster family with their heart and intentions in the right place.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you know what? Yes, taking your kids as a foster parent, just to kind of give you from a foster parent perspective, when the kids would go to the visit with CPS before I started supervising them, because I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? If it's my family, I got it, And even when it wasn't my family, I got it. If I feel like for some reason there's danger, I'll let you know and you guys can do it.
Yeah.
But they would be very upset coming home. Yeah, because they're babies and they just saw their mommy and daddy and don't understand why they're not going home with them.
Right.
So of course they're screaming and crying and angry and acting out.
Mm-hmm.
So where the hell's that training to say this is the norm that you should expect after a visit? If you're
you guys
not
don't
willing
get
to
trained
deal with
that?
it and still support, right? So if you're not willing to still support reunification of the parents, and basically, in some instances feel like you're the bad guy, or that it's just, it would be so much easier if we didn't have these little outbursts, whatever, then
Right.
don't do it. Don't do
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
It's like going to the pound and saying, oh man, this dog that was beaten and whatever, it's pissing on the floor. I'm going to take it back and get one that doesn't do that. Good luck. You know what I mean? Like, you just took their biological parent away from them.
Mm-hmm.
That is what they know. That is everything they know. And whether the parent has made mistakes or not made mistakes, that love and that connection is irreplaceable. It's irreplaceable, and it needs to stop being disrespected and disregarded and treated like it's just nothing, that they're a sperm donor.
Yeah.
So
no, you'd be excited to know that there are programs in place, that I know people working on certain things that will be able to help people's like basically like how they go about like taking care of a situation. So it's like there are things coming that are specifically to help people, and I don't know how much I can talk about that, but I'm really excited because that means that less people will go through this experience. Well, at least that's the goal. And we got to get people away from the whole Child Adoption Act. It's not, the goal shouldn't be let's adopt out more kids. The goal should be let's teach the families as much as possible. Let's have them included in investigations. Let's have them included in the reunification. Like, there's so much agency in cops. That's the outlook. That's the only people who can deal with this. And I'm like, that makes no sense, because I was innocent in my case. Why wasn't I in the front lines? And my daughter was still taken from me. Like, even though I had nothing to do with anything, I didn't even live with her. I still had access to my son. Like, I still had full custody to my son the entire case that was open. Everyone's like, how do you have custody of him, but you don't have custody of her? Like, it makes absolutely zero sense. And so the logic here doesn't exist. It's 100% they're taught to be heroes. The biggest thing that I can teach you today that you can do something with is get every single person that you're involved with that is a part of the CPS, anybody who's not your caseworker, who's basically is used against you, to get them to be for you, you need to get them to say one phrase: you retain the information. Now, when they say that you retain the information, it leaves the caseworker with a lot less ammunition, because the caseworker can't go back and say on paper, well, she doesn't get it. Well, that doesn't really add up, because this lady just said that I retained the information. So one book that you should really read, and I mean, I don't get any cutbacks from this or anything. So it's Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. And so that book teaches you a lot about how to connect with people's wants. Like when somebody wants something from you, you're negotiating. So when these
Right.
people want you to do a class, when these people want you to do something, like you have to understand how to communicate back to them that you like it'll seem like you're not in control, but the book actually teaches you how to ask questions so that you are in control while making it feel like they're in control. And it's so fascinating. um
That's
like for
awesome.
instance, like they told me to be protective. They kept telling me that I had to be protective, and then I said, how am I supposed to do that? And then that's when they explain everything for me. Instead of me arguing with them, I just get them to tell me exactly what they want, and then when I do exactly what they want, I've already pre-established that when I do what you want, I get something from this, right? So then
Right.
when they, because I asked them multiple times, like, so when I do this, I'll get my daughter back. They're like, oh well, like we'll see. And I'm like, no, we're not moving forward until there's an established negotiation here. We're not moving forward until I know that what I'm doing is going to have results, and that what I'm doing isn't going to waste time. And then I move the ball I establish the rules with their rules, and then I move the ball every step of the way by making sure that everything got done the way it needed to get done, going to appointments and yada yada yada. But I didn't UA, and I didn't do things that were against the rules. Like it's against the law to ask somebody to UA, especially if you haven't gone through due process and other court hearings and procedures like that. And we didn't. So I got
Right.
custody back of my kid without going to trial and without hiring a lawyer. So I know how to
Wow.
maneuver through this. But what's hard to
Right.
do is become friends with your enemies.
Yes.
Like, so sorry to
Yes.
go on a rant at the end, but you got to get them to say
No.
that you retain it. If you can get them to say that, you are going to have ammunition finally in your I guess gun. I don't know, but in your arsenal,
Right.
you're finally going to have some ammo, because it's so annoying to do this, do that, do this, and they're like, well, you just don't get it. So if you get them to say that you
See,
retain it, you're done.
right. And that's what, okay, so thinking about that towards like where I was in that situation, they kept telling me all you got to do is get the approval for the ICPC. But then when I got it, they said, well, now it's too late because they've already been here for over 6 months and they're bonded. Like, how do you overcome that?
And what sucks is like how are you supposed to do their job? It's like
Right.
it's like you're supposed to know these things that you would never know in a million years, and then it's like, oh, but you didn't
Right.
tell me to do that. It's like, well, how am I supposed to do
Right.
that? I didn't go to law school, and you're my lawyer. How come you're not telling me these things in
Right.
time? Like our lawyer didn't even fight. Like, well, I have a confusing situation. My wife and I are separated, so we don't live together, but we're still technically married. So just like to
Right.
get that out there as fast as I can. So when she got her lawyer, the lawyer basically like didn't tell her anything. Basically made her incriminate herself, like during the investigation for the cops, because they were investigating if like somebody hit the kids or something, and nothing came from that.
Right.
And I'm like, so why are we still in a court case? Like how can you tell that
Right.
something happened if the cops can't even tell you what happened? So yeah, we're in
Right.
this. Yeah, we're in a really really bad place right now, and they're trying to do everything in their power to separate us. Like
Yeah.
mentally and everything. And then they're like, but we're here to help you with your support system. Like that makes no sense.
Right.
You
We're
took
just going to
away.
add like, if you
Yeah,
think that you had problems before, let's add like 1,000 times more stress
yeah.
and make the expectations very vague so that you can definitely, uh, feel overwhelmed
Yeah, but I'm so happy
and
that like,
hopeless.
oh, I'm not that happy, but I'm glad that not everybody's alone. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
yes, we all have really bad experiences, but we're not alone anymore. It's like I'm creating, and I know I'm not the
Right.
first, but I'm creating this platform so everybody can share their story. That way,
Absolutely.
it's like a
And
testimony.
I, right. And I know lots of people that I've met over the last couple of years.
Yeah, send them my
There's a
way.
lady here in Phoenix where I'm from that her infant was medically kidnapped. They said that she had to have shaken him. And
Yeah,
then now she just finally I think it's been 3 years. She finally got these medical records that say that the child, when she took the baby to the hospital, he was tested for meningitis. He had a positive, and the health department was notified. And yet they still were trying to say that she's the one that caused whatever his symptoms were from the
Well,
meningitis.
they're con artists. So something to take note for anybody who's watching this: they target poor people, they target people of color, they target single families, they target people who are super busy, they target people who are angry, they target people who don't have any control of their life, like financially, spiritually, physically. I'm just trying to think of everybody that that is their demographic.
Yeah.
Shout them out if you
If
know of
they seem
anybody.
vulnerable, they're targeted.
Vulnerable. Yeah, if you're vulnerable at all, you are a target. And if you have kids that are cute, adorable, target. Like you're a target.
And young.
You have,
Don't forget young.
It's called marketable. Like your children are marketable. Like they're going to be making at least $4,000. Let's just pretend on average they made $2,000 a kid. There's 410 kids in foster care system at all times. Like we're looking at like around like, I mean, that's billions. We're looking at billions of dollars every single year that these people are making just off of their taxpayers' money for just having the kids in the system. They're not even earning it. They just have the kids in the system. So this is absolutely disgusting stuff. Like I can't.
And why not change those incentives to be, you get a bonus if there's reunification.
Back. Right. Why isn't that just the other way around? That makes no sense at all.
And why not share that bonus with the family so that they have an ability to continue to care for them or get any additional resources that they were lacking? You know what I mean? Like,
well, because the money's
there.
This
system needs to be revamped big time.
Yeah, the money's there.
Yeah, the incentives need to be at a different place.
Right, because like right now, if this is if it was $2,000 per kid every month, and there's 410 kids in the system every month, then that's $820 million a month. Multiply that by 12, you get $9,840 million, and what I'm wondering is why do we have to pay that? You know, it's like they have the money, so I don't understand like why we're paying all this. So it's like, to get out of this, anybody who's listening, get every single person that your caseworker tells you that you have to be in contact with to say that you retain all the information. That is one thing that they cannot take away. Get it on record. Get it on. Well, make sure everybody knows it. Like everybody connected to you know that you're done with everything that you're doing. So that's basically like the number one rule that I have for anybody trying to get through this.
Right. And one thing I did recently, I think I got sidetracked there, but two of my boys that are kind of special needs, one's on the spectrum and the other one's ADHD.
Right.
I put them to bed, tucked them in, said their prayers, came downstairs. All of a sudden I hear them hollering at each other, run back upstairs. The older brother had jumped up on the top bunk bed, had the other brother, was wrestling him, kind of had him in a little bit of a chokehold. So I picked up the older brother, took him downstairs. Well, I guess whenever they were fighting, because it was dark, so I don't know, I couldn't really see when I went in. I just heard the hollering. And I mean, it couldn't have taken me more than 60 seconds to get from upstairs, downstairs to upstairs.
Right.
Anyway, he went to school, and I have a picture of it. He had a little tiny scratch right here from fighting with his brother. They reported that to CPS, had an investigation, left my case open for 3 or 4 months, ordered all medical records, all records from their counselors, their therapists, everything. When they interviewed the boys before I even knew this was going on, without an adult present, which I think that needs to change too. There needs to be a non-biased adult present, that's not with CPS.
Cops can't talk to kids.
Taking a kid in a room and asking loaded questions is not okay, because you can definitely get kids to answer however you want. You can lead them. But when the lady came to my house, after she'd already talked to all my kids, and she's telling me that, well, they said they had gotten a little scuffle and you had you had taken them downstairs. one of the brothers downstairs, you separated him, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, so what was wrong with what I did? You know,
Yeah.
why are you wanting me to sign something that you're doing an investigation for child abuse and neglect? I'm
Never
still not
signed
understanding.
anything.
I refused to sign the form.
Yep.
And when I did finally, because I only talked to her on the porch the first time, when she came back 3 months later with some other stupid thing, and told me she was ordering all the records and everything, the minute I let her in the house, I sat her down at the table, I put my phone out with a recorder on, and I said, I will not talk to you unless this is being recorded. So I'm letting you know right now, I am pressing record. And she's like, it's against my will to be recorded, but she has the right to do so. So we'll go ahead and proceed. So that
Wow.
right there, within like a month after that one, I got my closure letter.
They're a government agency. How can it be wrong to record them? It's, if anything, they need to be recorded.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you even know that they're going to come to your house, find out your state laws, find out if you need to just disclose it. And honestly,
Yeah.
whether they want to be recorded or not, as long as you've disclosed it, I believe you can still proceed.
Yeah.
So any conversation you're having with anyone, I would absolutely record.
I wouldn't even
That way
tell
it
them. I
keeps
would
them
just
accountable too,
watch
and then they know that you're like paying attention.
just watch the recording afterwards and write it all down and make a script out of it. And then just be like, I have a photographic
Right.
memory. I didn't record
So
you.
even if they say, right. Or just say, you know what, my memory's not that great. Can I record this conversation so that I can relay back to it later to make
Nice.
sure that I understand what you're asking of me?
Act dumb.
So that way it doesn't look like you're like coming out, because like you said, if you come out against them, then automatically they've got a bullseye on your head.
Yep.
And I think that was part of it. Was even my attorney told me, Renee, you need to stop being so assertive.
Yeah.
Like, assertive, you're ripping my family apart. What are you talking about? How am I not supposed to be passionate? But I toned it down and said, okay, if people are going to use that against me, I don't feel like I'm angry. I'm just passionate about this. This is important to me.
Yeah.
This is life or death.
My caseworker
How am
said
I
I was
not
yelling
supposed
at
to
her.
feel intensely?
Yeah, she said I was yelling at her all the time. I'm like, I'm Jewish. I'm just talking like this. Like, I was raised by white people. Like, I'm loud. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm proud of who I am.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but no, this has been a great first episode. Seriously, I mean, we could probably go on for hours. Like, I'd love to do a Joe Rogan style, like 4-hour podcast. I just don't know if that's the best way to go for the first one.
Right.
But this is
call
great.
me back anytime you want to chat again.
Yeah, no, let's definitely plan
any way
something
I can
out.
help.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I'll be in contact with you afterwards, and we'll talk a little bit more soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank you again so much for hearing me.
No, thank you, Renee, for sharing your
a place
story.
to speak.
No, absolutely. We're happy to have you anytime.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful evening.
Okay, you too. Talk soon. Bye.
All right.